We've been in Athens now for just over 6 years. And before that, spent some time in North India working under Jeff Sundell and that whole crew up there, which was great, kind of where we cut our teeth and gave us an idea of what we wanted to try to do when we got to Athens. And so that's a really quick synopsis. But in our last interview, we talked really just about how we kind of set the stage for what we're seeing now, and just the importance of finding and raising up national believers to be on the front lines. So really, and you can listen to the other interview to learn more about how we did that. But just the fact is, everything that we're doing now and the fruit that we're seeing in the churches that we're seeing planted are 100% being done by national believers. And we really have a high value on their ability, and because they're the best at it, they're the A League. But obviously your A League is an Afghan reaching an Afghan, that came out of Islam, Iranian reaching an Iranian that came out of Islam, Moroccan reaching Moroccans, whatever. So that's, those A Leaguers, that's who we're looking for, because they're the best at it. Right now we're working with 6 guys. I don't have time to tell all of their stories. But Hadi is a great example. He's a young Afghan believer. He's in his late 20s, early 30s. And he came to faith once he got here to Athens, just on his refugee journey, was seeking, all of those things that you tend to see in Muslims coming to faith. He had an interaction with a believer. He got copies of portions of scripture in his heart language. He had a dream. He had visions. And all of that just led him to the Lord. And then he started working with a humanitarian aid organization here in Athens. But when I met Hadi and I heard his story, I offered to take him out for tea or coffee and just to hear more about his passion. And one of the first things he tells me is, he says, Will, I love sharing Christ with Muslims, like the hardest of the hardest Muslims. I come from Afghanistan, and they're really difficult people to share and to talk with, but I love it. I'm like, man, brother, that's like a dream come true, right? And so just kind of slowly start walking alongside, Hadi, and just casting vision for No Place Left, starting to give him some tools just to see what he'll do with them. And man, just, he was already an L1 type leader. And
what's an L1 type leader?
Yeah, an L1 is an evangelist, a bold evangelist who is seeing fruit, within his ministry. And then, L1 to L5, we don't have time to do the full training, but L2 is church planner, L3, multiple churches kind of creating a network. L4, they're releasing the authority and really starting to see movement. L5, they're actually training other groups of churches and have fully released the authority of theirs. So 32nd, L1 to L5. But L1s are typically the guys that we find, so those A-leaguers that we're looking for, usually they're already at that point. Very rarely is it somebody that we have led to the Lord. Matter of fact, I don't know of that many. I don't know what the percentage, but it's got to be really high when you look within movements. There's an insider there. There's an A-leaguer who was already a believer and just needed to give a little bit of vision and strategy and tools and resources. But the passion was there. Just nobody had given them a chance. And that's really kind of the main thing that we look at. Where are those guys out there that are just hungry, to be used by the Lord, but nobody's ever given them a chance? And Hadi's a great example of that. So that once we gave him that, and we basically, for a lot of these guys, the light bulbs start to go off when we really kind of push them out front. It's like, no, brother, this is your ministry. This is your fruit. Mm-hmm. I'm not coming to your groups. I'm not teaching your people. You are. And really to push them on the front edge, even though it takes time, because he doesn't have the knowledge and all of that. It's fine. I'd rather not have all of that. I'd rather have an A-leaguer up front and it take a little bit more time, but it's really based on obedience. And when he really starts getting excited about, his Timothys and, his Timothys have now led other people to faith. And so, man, just over the last 3 years working alongside Hadi, and really the last 6 months, again, because he's free, he's freed up in ministry to do this full time. We help do that for him. So when the reality comes that he can go to Lesbos, which is a hot spot right now for refugees still coming in from Turkey. And we're able to partner with another ministry that's there that has facilities and a shared vision, but they don't have anybody. They don't have any A-leaguers. They don't have anybody like Hadi. And so we're able to say, hey, Hadi, man, you want to go to Lesbos and spend a few months there? Well, a few months has turned into 6. And, he's starting on a second church plant. And just the issue there is just constant rotation of people. But to see a church planted in that setting is just phenomenal. And to see leaders being raised up. So now when Hadi sends me messages, it's not about what he's doing. It's about what some of his Timothys are doing. And that's the exciting part.
And you have half a dozen guys like this who have come to Christ, and you're coaching and mobilizing to help them multiply amongst their people.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We've got a team here on the ground. So it's not just me, but there's 3 of us in particular that are really investing in these guys. Coaching is definitely the right word. And really just trying to, we've helped give them the authority that they might need in certain settings by licensing and even ordaining some of them through our church back in the States. But really that just gives them some authority in certain legacy settings, which is just unfortunate. They needed it. But regardless, just to kind of prop them up as much as we can, and so that they can be the most effective. And right now the brothers are from Afghanistan, Iran, the Congo, Pakistan, Iraq, and Greece.
Okay, so, and typically are they mainly working amongst their language or people group?
For the most part, yeah. You've got some crossover. Again, when you're looking in the Persian world, when you're looking at Iranians and Afghans, there's obviously an easy bleed over there. And then when you're looking on the Kurdish Arabic work, even though he's Iraqi Kurdish, obviously he's doing a lot of work among Syrians and Lebanese and really any Arabic speaking people. So we kind of have taken just because of the setting, it's not necessarily ideal that, I'd love a Lebanese sharing with a Lebanese, but I'll take an MBBer from Iraq who can speak, Arabic and Kurdish, who's passionate about lostness, so he can do that. He can engage. And so we just kind of make the best of what we've got. So kind of taking more of a linguistic approach. I got a French speaker from the Congo who has led Moroccans to the Lord. Again, you'd love a Moroccan sharing with Moroccans, but I'll take a French speaker who loves Jesus, who's an A-leaguer, in that setting, maybe he's a B-league, but it's still better than me, for sure. And I think
So
in a refugee setting, the more the foreigners involved, the more skewed the motives of those coming is. It's just a reality. Mm-hmm. So we've got to just be wise in that practice. I think in a lot of third world settings, same thing. When they see you and I, it's just a natural outflow that they're going to be thinking about the next step for them. For refugees, they don't want to stay here. They want to move on. They're looking at a better life. They're looking at a better future. And I can look like, it's funny, but, I can look like eye candy to them, which, nobody's ever accused me of that, but that's the reality. And so the more I can back away and really put guys like Hadi out front, because he can filter through that. I just had a meeting yesterday with our Iraqi Kurdish brother, and he's just sharing with me about another Iraqi man who is trying to take advantage of another foreigner. And, he says, he can't do that with me, because I know what he's trying, I know what he's doing. And, just as the foreigners, especially from the West, we tend to want to believe the best in people and, look for the positive. And, we just get taken advantage of a lot. So hands down, probably the most important part of our work, even early on, is trying to find these brothers that, God has already called typically, and they're just looking for an opportunity. So really to prioritize my time in the effort to try to find these brothers. Which
is there any pattern in how God is using you to find those brothers?
No, yeah, not really. I mean, because we found them all kind of in different settings. And I think we covered some of this in the first interview, but I can't remember exactly. But, I'm at one meeting, meeting with somebody about their ministry, and somebody walks in the back and they look at me and say, "Oh, you got to meet this guy. He's the kind of guy you would want to work with." Well, okay, there you go. Let's meet and let's have coffee and let's hear your testimony. So it's just, a lot of it is just, learning to ask those right questions and really just trying to hear those common responses that you kind of, in these A-League type brothers that are already L1s that, are just kind of really waiting for an opportunity. You start to hear common responses to questions, and usually it's a lot, I didn't know I could do that, but man, absolutely. You begin to see the eagerness, and then it's a few months of just walking side by side with them, meeting with them a couple of times a week. Hey man, tell me about your week. How did it go? And you said you were going to do this and this, and how did that go? And hey, let me give you this next tool, and let me see what you do with it. And we slowly just kind of start to see their passion for No Place Left kind of come about. And it's just kind of that process.
So just to reflect back, you're out there connecting, and you're looking for believers who already engaged in sharing the gospel or have a real burden to do that. And then you take some time to journey with them and give them tasks, give them some input, and see what they do with it. So you're putting yourself in a place where you're bumping into people, and you're not looking to activate a passive believer. I mean, you do that if you could, but you're actually looking for believers within that community who already have a burden to make disciples.
Yeah. Listen, it can happen. I mean, and we've seen it happen. But I'll say this, a passive believer is best motivated by somebody from their own people group, not from a foreigner. And so what we have seen is that, again, coming back to the guys, it always comes back to them. If you've got the right guys and you can cast that vision and they catch it and they get passionate about it, they start talking to their people about it, and they start casting vision to their people. And when they hear of a pocket of believers, our Pakistani brother that we're working with, his network now in Greece, it's so funny and just God ordained how he finds out about these pockets of believers that are now all over Greece. And because they're migrant workers, the Pakistanis are one of the few that are willing to travel and do, field manual labor. And so what happens, you end up with 4 or 5 Pakistani believers that are 4 hours outside of Athens that are working with a crew of 80 Muslims. And they all kind of have communal living, and they just go from village to village harvesting whatever, fruit or vegetable is in season. And so he'll be on a train going to visit with one of them, and a Muslim Pakistani man who's going to work there says, so as he's sharing, the Muslim man, he doesn't believe, but he says, there's Christians over in this other village. You should go see them. And sure enough, he diverts a little bit and he goes to visit them, and there's believers there. Well, they didn't know what to do, those believers. They're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And so for Awesome to be able to go in and to, cast vision to those 4 guys, really 3 out of the 4 are pretty nominal. Actually came from a Catholic background. But, now would say that they're believers, but one of those guys caught the vision. And so it comes from Awesome being able to go to do that, to be able to filter through, even though all 4 of those guys were believers, one of them really caught the vision, but he caught it from Awesome, not from me. Would have been a lot more difficult for me to get in there. And who knows if they would have understood it the same way if I had gone. So it's that A-leaguer, that L1 who's moving into L2, L3 leader that we really want to put a lot of our investment in, because they're going to be the best ones to motivate, let's say, nominal believers within their own people group. Much better than me, again.
And so, Will, through your guys, you're seeing disciples and churches form amongst what sort of people groups?
Yeah, I mean, all of those languages that I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned languages, but, so Pakistani, Iraqi, Syrian, Lebanese, Iranian, Afghan. We're starting new work among Greeks, which is amazing, and we're excited about that. In the French work, Congolese, Nigerian, Togo, Burkina Faso. There's about 10 different nations within that vein of Africa that are here that we're seeing work among as well. So, yeah, and that's probably the biggest difference between our last interview, which was a year ago, and now, is that we're seeing churches planted. Whereas before, we were getting downstream with discipleship, third, fourth generation discipleship, but then people were moving on so quickly. We just didn't have the time with them here. Well, now, because the international laws have changed, and the refugees are, unfortunately for them, they're stuck here for 2-3 years. And what that does, though, it gives us more time for them to actually go through the full discipleship process, short-term discipleship process, 8 weeks, let's say, and then get plugged into or begin a new church. And that's what we're just seeing happen more and more and more, are churches formed out of those that have gone through the discipleship process. And now we're actually starting to see generational church happen as well, which is just a great thing to see. We're excited about that. Hands down, that's the biggest difference between last year and this year. But it's just because of just the reality of the situation. People are here longer. And so it gives
And so previously, I think I remember it, you might have only had 6 or 8 weeks with someone before they moved on to some other part of Europe.
Yeah.
And now you're getting more like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. Well, it depends. So because we may not meet them in their journey, let's say, until they're about to leave. So it still happens where we only have somebody for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. But the reality is now it's more that we've got longer access. I'd say at least a year and a half with people. But kind of even more exciting is that it's happening, generationally. So now there's more people hearing. There's more people being exposed to the gospel. There's more opportunities for people to experience a reproducible church plant now than ever before. And so we may not find them till later in their journey, but as far as they're about to leave now and move up into Northern Europe or move back, into homeland. But because now there's more churches and more spread out, they've got more opportunity to experience healthy church. We've got more Timothys and third gen guys planning churches that they're just the network is expanding. So we may meet somebody a little bit later, but they're able to jump right into something that's already healthy, so they can see it before they move on, which is, for us, is exciting.
Okay. Yeah. Now, just because you have more time, that doesn't automatically guarantee church formation.
No.
So there must be some things you and the folk have learnt about moving from disciples into church formation. What is that you're learning?
Intentionality. And it really comes from again, I'm just going to talk about them the whole time because they're really the guys that are doing the work, but it comes from them. And so, a lot of my conversation with them now is as we're doing their gen mapping. Okay, so you started meeting with these 4 guys. Does that intend to be church? So like from the very beginning, you intend for that to be a church, or do they understand that they're going to be a church? And now, more often than not, the answer is yes. We still get the ones who are like, no, they're probably not going to be church, but they're able to say that now because they've seen what the other ones have done. And they see, these guys probably not going to happen, but let's keep investing in them because they are being faithful. But they're leaving too soon, or it's too difficult for them to gather in their setting. It's kind of dangerous. There's still some of that going on, but for the most part, it's just the intentionality of, we want these to be churches. We want them to experience healthy church before they move on. Some of them for a few weeks, some of them for a few months, some of them for a few years. And some of these guys are going to be, and we're starting to see this, guys that have already seen second and third gen themselves, that are now moving on into other places in Europe or back into homeland. And so that's really kind of where we see the spread of a city like Athens, that you're going to have, call it a hub or whatever you want to call it. But the reality is people are coming and going constantly. They don't come here to stay. And so what's the most effective way that we can train them and for them to experience something healthy that they can reproduce wherever they go? I know we talked about this in our last interview. The reality is when somebody moves from Athens, let's say, to Germany, very rarely do they land in a city where there's a evangelical church among their people group. It's also rare that they find let's say a German evangelical church that they can be a part of. And so we find guys, they just get up there and they get lost. They don't have any community. And, if we didn't give them an opportunity here to experience a healthy, reproducible church, how can we expect them to go there and plant a church? And so certainly the vision is that nobody leaves Athens to go find a church. People leave Athens to go plant churches, whether that's up in Europe or whether that's back again in the homeland. And so that's the intentionality of that is key. And just kind of keeping that in front of the guys, keep things reproducible, keep things moving, keep, releasing authority, keep passing that off. Hey, there's no need for that family to come here to start another church in their home. And just that communication now is a little bit more streamlined than it was, let's say, a year ago.
And so new disciples are able to experience church there in Athens. And you're seeing that now some of them are moving on and up into Europe, and some of them are returning home to the countries, I guess in some cases, they were fleeing from.
Right.
And churches are being started, not only in Athens, but in other parts of Europe and back in the Middle East or North Africa or other parts of Africa, and as far away as Pakistan. Is that happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing about, now it's harder to track actual church plants back in home country. It's a little bit more difficult, just being able to have that conversation. But we do know of certain locations back in certain Muslim countries where either disciples that left here with the intention of going back to plant a church are there now and they're active. Entire families that came to faith and now have moved back with the intention of being disciple makers and church planters. And there's still some communication. That's certainly an element that we need to, just do a better job of. But, let's take Pakistan, for example. We've got lots of no place left minded guys, working in Pakistan. And so what we've been able to do, Asim will get a phone call from, a village out in, middle of nowhere, Pakistan. And there's a pocket of believers there. And they've connected with Asim because he's got a YouTube channel or whatever. And he finds out where they are. Well, we call, like-minded coworkers that are coming in and out of Pakistan and go, hey, we've got a pocket of believers over here that want to get trained. And it happens. And so that's where just the, like the no place left community really can advance, kingdom growth by just cooperating. We can't all go there. Asim can't go back. So, what's, next best thing would be some type of a media resource that we're doing, among Pakistanis and a lot among Iranians. But then, next best, let's get somebody in there, to actually get some training. So that kind of stuff is happening there. And then on up into Europe, we're actually finding, cases. I mean, this literally just happened this week. I got an email from some no place left guys in Germany and said, hey, we've got a Persian guy that we want to get trained. He's doing ministry, but he's kind of stuck. He actually came out of Athens. So, hey man, send me his photo, send me his name. We'll come to find out he had been led to the Lord by our Iranian brother here 3 years ago. But at that time was in a legacy setting. Well, he's now since obviously come out of that and is pursuing movement among Persians and probably, and for sure, seeing the deepest generation church growth that we've got. Real wide network now all throughout Europe and back into homeland. And so just come to find out, this brother came to faith there, but now he's stuck. So we already have connected them on phone, and Jawad remembered this brother, showed him the picture. Absolutely. So now this guy is hearing from somebody that came out of a legacy setting to pursue movement. He's now able to speak into that, church work in Germany. And then because all of our guys are free to travel, they're legal, they've got passports, so they can travel up to Germany and go do a training, go do a 3 or 4 day intensive. But it's all being done by nationals. There's no need for the foreigner to be there. And it just, it heightens the effectiveness if you've got a trained national believer that can go in there and do that. And you cut through all the red tape, you cut through all of the, cultural issues, you cut through all of the linguistic issues, and man, just, hey, Joel, get up there, train those guys, and let's see how we can get movement going there as well, through their ministry. And so now just being able to do more trainings like that up into Europe is a real blessing. And we do have churches that are planted now up in Europe through guys that have gone through the network, which is pretty quiet. If he'll be quiet, we'll just keep going. All right, we're good. Go ahead.
Okay, who's this now?
This is Noah.
Noah, wonderful.
Noah.
So,
Okay.
What are you learning about how God is using Athens to reach these previously unreached people?
It's an opportunity that I think we've just got to be faithful with. I think there's going to be, it's almost, I think we talked about this in the first interview. It's like, I recognize that a lot of it's just not even fair. I mean, we've got people coming to us. We're not having to go find them. We've got people coming from places where we can't go. And it's even if we could go, our ability to share in that setting is limited, and much less their ability to respond is so limited. Whereas, what we can do here, they can respond. We can share, a national believer can share. Somebody can respond to the gospel and be discipled without fear. And, just the opportunity is, just amazing. I mean, you look at Paul's message, we'll go a little biblical here, but you look at Paul's message on Mars Hill, not far from here, about 2,000 years ago, and he's talking to a bunch of philosophers, and he's telling them that, God all throughout history has allowed mass movements of people. Why? So that some may seek him and find him. He determines their allotted boundaries and periods of time. I mean, that sounds a lot like what we're going through these days with the movement of refugees. And God allows that. And it's hard for us to understand, but God allows that, no doubt. And then we've just got to be faithful. Let's join him in that, because he has some among them that are already seeking, and they are ready to receive him, to find him, and to know him. And so just the opportunity to meet them, for many of them, in the first environment where they can hear the gospel and respond to it and be discipled, experiencing, interaction with Christians for the first time. All of that takes place here. And then the reality is they're not staying. Now we've got a little bit longer, maybe a year, maybe 2, where we can just really be strategic in how we train them and disciple them, and not all of them, but a portion of them. Let's send them out as church planters wherever they go. And because of the natural movement of the refugee highway. And, it's not preordained where they're going to go. I mean, they may want to end up somewhere, but at the end of the day, the UN helps them decide, where they're going to land. And so let's just say, hey, man, the Lord's in charge of that too. And so, okay, I know you wanted to go to Germany, but you just ended up in Austria. Okay. I mean, that's where God wants you. God wants to plant a church among your people in Austria or wherever that might be. So that's just the exciting part, that we see in what God's doing in Athens. It's just, it's an opportunity that, we just don't see it, I don't think, in a lot of other mega cities. I mean, there's other mega cities, obviously, in the world, but just, a Muslim's first exposure to the Western world, to Christianity, a Muslim's ability to respond, and then the fact that they're not going to stay, they're going to move on. And it's a great opportunity.